solar farm is going. If you're not here for that, then you're in the wrong place. But if you are here for that, then great, welcome. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have the whole board in attendance: Jean, Bruce, Don, Jack, myself. Sue's online as the alternative board member. And so this is a special meeting called to do primarily public hearings and to discuss the potential approval of the solar project on 76 Road. Are there any items that we want to add to the agenda about this project this evening? Besides public hearings and discussion? No. Okay. Then what? Are we all good? We got the recording? And have you made?
Let me check. Yeah, she's got a recording. We're good.
Right. And minutes are being taken.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add before we open for public hearings? No, not seeing any. Okay, then I move that we open the public hearing for, I'm just gonna say parcel A. A, B, and C. I don't know, I mean, or do we have any other reference?
A is the northernmost parcel, owned by Mr. Frank Verrett and Cynthia Kinsland. B is owned by Michael Pichel, and C is owned by Anthony Tavelli.
And actually,
For what
we only have
that's
two,
worth.
Yeah.
and actually, we only have two subdivisions. What? Thank you.
Verrett is not requiring a subdivision. The A northern parcel does not.
Right. So it's just B and C. Okay, so let's open this public hearing for subdivision B. Do I have a second?
Second,
All right, do we need to vote? All in favor? No.
we can.
Okay.
All in
Yeah. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment about this subdivision? Crickets. Okay. I move that we close the public hearing on.
Second.
B. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Open the public hearing on subdivision for parcel C. Second, excellent. Are there any comments on this subdivision? No, I'm not seeing any, and we don't have anybody online, right?
There are 8 people.
8 people online. Anybody online that wants to make a comment, please raise your hand. Mary?
There is one.
One hand is raised.
Yeah,
So I will,
unmute.
whoops.
I've already asked her to unmute.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Introduce yourself.
It's at us?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Jonathan.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Only we have
The broadband. Jonathan and Mary Alice, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're cutting out and we can't hear you.
You're frozen.
Yep.
Maybe I would just take off video. You say a lot of times that helps.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe turn your video off so it's just audio and that might help.
That's right. That's when it
They're
happened.
like old school frozen too.
The frontier.
They can't hear us.
This should have happened in the last meeting.
Really.
Yeah, they're good.
Is there anybody else online that wants to make a comment while we're waiting for them to come back on? No.
This is in regard to one of the subdivisions.
I'm not seeing anyone. Yeah, this would be.
Mary's back in the chat.
I've asked her to unmute again.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Jess.
Hi, we got disconnected. We're really looking forward to the broadband extension here into Caroline because that happens a lot for us. Um, I'm really not, haven't studied it enough to talk about parcel A versus B or C, but I do support the development of solar where possible and legal out there on 76. I think we need more local energy production. There's a good chance that federal support for solar projects could disappear at any moment with the Trump in there. I know there's laws that are supposed to go on for X number of years. They can change those overnight. So to me, that gives a little bit of urgency. I don't advocate that we allow them to not meet the basic guidelines that they should be, but I'm hoping that the project can go forward after those corrections are made. I think that's all I have to say. And the climate change part, you know, that this is, we just withdrew from the global, you know, the Paris Agreement, the Paris Accords. So, like I said, I just think anything can happen, and that we should take advantage of an opportunity if it's here. Thanks.
Can I also speak?
Yeah.
So this is Mary Alice Kobler, and I'm voicing my support for this project. I would like to hear more about the sustainability of ag lands, and I have not heard a good argument for why a solar farm isn't preserving ag lands for the future. I think that there's initial great disturbance, but the solar farm is supposed to be around for 20 to 30 years, and if it's grazed by sheep, it can return to ag land or get recommissioned for another bound of solar panels. So I haven't been convinced that this is destroying ag land. If it could be a type of agrivoltaics, and so I'm listening, but I have not been convinced otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else online who wants to make a comment? Raise your hand if you're online, you want to make a comment. I'm not seeing anyone.
See anyone, Jesse?
No, I don't see anyone.
Then I move to close the public hearing for the subdivision for parcel C.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. All right, so I move to open the public hearing for site plan review.
Here.
Again, all right. So any comments, not about the subdivision, but in general about site plan review, materials, and or discussions that have happened so far on the project? No. Anyone online, please raise your hand.
You have one up front here.
Yep.
Mike Helmer, Speedsville Fire Department. I was talking to this gentleman here, he kind of explained the setup, the banks, the shut-off switches for our fire departments. One of the things that I'm worried about is taking our vehicles up there. What kind of roads are you gonna have? Are they gonna be sustainable to handle 3,000 gallons of water plus the vehicle weight? And that's one of my concerns.
Okay. Thanks. I don't know if we're supposed to respond or anything at this point.
When is the appropriate time for that back and forth?
I guess it could be now. If other people
So
are.
it's not required that we respond now, but
No.
we should, whenever we're dealing with this issue, talk about fire and
Yeah.
And actually it's on our list of things to talk about.
It's definitely on our list of things. So I guess just in response quickly is that it's on our list of criteria, whether we make it a condition or what, as far as having continued discussions with fire departments and some sort of written approval for a number of things pertaining to how you would access the site, deal with fires, process as far as who does what, shutting off power, whatnot. And things like that. So they have an emergency access or emergency response plan. So it's a matter of you guys coordinating and making sure that everybody is on the same page.
And just for reference, everybody, I'm trying to take notes of the public comments, and I know some of them will be directly asked again by the board, but I was thinking that we'd address them all at the same time.
Okay.
Later, rather than each one individually now. Does that make sense? Or do we want to get into fire now and I can address agrivoltaics from Ms. Kobler now?
Let's get on into it all later. I guess let's just hear if there's any other comments. Are there any other comments from the public? Yeah.
I'd already talked a little bit about road construction and meeting all the town specifications for width and weight and accessibility for us into the sea.
Okay.
That for the fire department, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess our point is we're going to answer your question,
Yeah.
just not at this exact minute.
They're gonna respond more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we close the public hearing then? Excellent. Move that we close the public hearing on site plan review. Second, all in favor? Aye. Excellent. All right, then, general discussion. I'm gonna open it to the board as far as where you guys want to start. Was general discussion of Don nicely prepared sort of a list of what I would consider discussion topics as to whether or not they are conditions or requirements before approval or whatnot, and how we want to deal with them. I provided the list to Mark, who I think has also sent it on to Chet and Seth.
Yep, I have that here. Yeah.
Excellent. Do we want to potentially start at the top of the list, or are there priority items that anybody wants to start with, talk about, or just move on through from top to bottom?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one, that's Speedy's permit, which somebody please remind me which one that is. Is that the US
State
Fish and
Pollution
Wildlife?
Discharge Elimination System. So this is all the national framework has created, and there's a national pollution discharge elimination system, and that is encouraged each state to develop its own, which is then subsequently created several things, but this one in particular is construction guidelines for stormwater pollution and prevention plans. So it's a long-winded way of saying the Speedy's permit is tied in with the SWIP plan. The Department of Environmental Conservation will issue it. And yeah, so they'll be the party to issue that, and it could also be called a SWIP.
Okay, great. Any board, I'll preface this with the first few on the list. Obviously, you guys already had in your conditions of your proposed resolution. So, most of these are coming from you guys, and then I guess we would just like to, there might be some of them that we'd like to discuss. So as far as board members, any discussion or questions on this permit? No, something that we would include in the condition for approval.
Yes.
Okay. NYSEG agreements. Any questions or concerns, comments from board about that? And
It's not a concern or comment, just to clarify that before they can connect to the grid, they have to have an agreement with NICEAG. And so we need to know that before construction can begin, that they have that agreement. So they're saying it's a
Right.
condition, and we should accept it as a condition.
Mhm.
Right.
Does the NICEAG agreement have anything to do with who gets offered the power first or any of that?
No, the NICEAG agreement is roles and responsibilities when it comes to connection, safety, protocol. If the grid goes down on NICEAG's side or on our side, it's a permission to connect one physical thing to another, and the insurances and liabilities that are associated with it. So the customer agreements are, with the bureaucracy, different side of the house.
Thank you.
Excellent. I think it was in your list of permits that were still pending that I saw the US Fish and Wildlife Service there was some permit on that, I thought, but I didn't see it. I wasn't sure what it was.
So the federal portions of our permitting is basically the way it goes is that the core is the sort of the singular point of something to be issued, but the core will always coordinate and review what the Department of the Fish and Wildlife Services is also saying. So, if I can't think of a what if, but first it goes to Fish and Wildlife Service. They're aware of northern long-eared bats, which are sort of a broad issue across the United States, and monarch butterflies, broad issues across the states. So they'll issue their statement about that, and then the Corps will consider that as we talk to them about our culvert and our wetland delineations and whether there's some interplay there, but the Corps will be responsible for issuing the permit.
Got it.
That's the Army Corps of Engineers for.
Yes, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
So next on our list was Army Corps permit, which I saw, there was another permit that they were waiting on, making a statement until Army Corps signed off on it or made their statement as well. So, okay. Any questions, comments about the Army Corps permit? Department of Ag and Markets, unreasonably adverse response. I know Ag and Markets has been sort of a topic of discussion as far as agricultural guidelines that they have for agriculture. We can either discuss the guidelines later or now because they already show up a couple times on our list.
I think they're
Or
two
if you want
different
to bring,
things.
you think they're two different things?
They are.
So what is this?
Well,
So,
It's supposed to
Don,
be
which two things are different?
complying with the guidelines that the Department of Ag and Markets has put together for constructing solar arrays.
Mhm.
Is different from their ruling on unreasonably adverse response. One is a set of guidelines that give specific directions on how the solar system is to be constructed, to be operated, and to be decommissioned, and has nothing to do with unreasonably adverse response.
I hear you that there's two different pieces of paperwork, and that's understandable. But as part of our submission to Department of Ag and Markets, we did agree to the standards that they require. So,
But you didn't say that in your documents to us.
sure. I'm looking, and I look and see that we submitted something, and I thought I notified the team of that, but in the shared directory, there's a document dated December 26, 2024, which includes a full submittal to the Department of Ag and Markets. It includes many things that have been discussed, but must not have made that known enough for it to be considered. It's in the data room right now, but I understand that it may not have been considered.
Let's see if I can find it.
It's the file is called 00 SPR Ag Data NOI. And so that's what went to the Department of Ag and Markets. We don't have it resolved. They have a queue of these things to review. So I unless something came in the past couple of days that I've missed.
So additional. I'm not sure where we're going with this discussion right now. It's kind of wandering around, but I think
Yeah.
we want to. So this is a condition that Distributed Sun has put in for approval. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no objection by this body. So if there isn't, then we move on to the next one and we'll get to the solar law and what it requires for adhering to the Department of Ag and Markets guidelines. That's a later topic on this list.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So next on the list is DEC take permit, which it seemed like there were a bunch of DEC permits hoops that you guys are jumping through.
Yep. Yes, they are an Activate group. And the take permit is with respect to the observed northern harriers on the site. So
Yes.
we are working on our net conservation benefit plan that will be submitted to the DEC, that they need to see that the impact of this solar array in the town of Caroline is mitigated somehow. And we're working with folks in the Finger Lakes region to address that, creating more than the habitat that's impacted here. We will need to complete that process before we are able to break ground with respect to the DEC. So we'll be happy to show it to you once we obtain it.
Okay. And I guess just for clarification, like I think if nothing else, we're helping develop a list of conditions for an approval, but I would say it's also, unfortunately, Bob's not here. It's also his checklist before issuing a permit.
Bob is on the line if that is, if
Online?
he's able
Okay,
to unmute.
Okay, so, just so everybody in the town's on the same page?
Okay.
Okay. So next on the list is SWIP approval. Yeah, being a broad topic because then there's a whole bunch of comments about the SWIP that have already been made by TG Miller.
Yeah, if I could just pause on what TG Miller did, and we mentioned Speedies, we mentioned SWIP, we mentioned TG Miller. I think let's try and keep Speedies and SWIP as just try and keep those in one area of consideration. What TG Miller did is, yes, they analyzed the SWIP and they have comments there and we need to address those. But I just want to call out that they also just had general engineering comments, which basically I just want to let folks know that that is slightly different apart and we will address those too. I just want to make sure we can split that out when the time comes.
Yeah, that's how they split them out, so.
So the reason why this is on the list is we asked our attorney if we need to have a SWIP approval before we grant the approval of this application. And the answer was yes. So we have a number of comments that have come back specifically to SWIP from TG Miller's. And from my perspective, listening to our attorney, we should not be approving this project until you have responded to those specific questions about the SWIP from our professional that's worked on this project.
So Don, do I understand you're trying to say that because there are comments.
No, I'm talking about the specific, PG Miller specific comments about SWIP, not the engineering comments that are below that.
Right. So because there are comments about SWIP, you're being counseled that you can't issue can't vote on a resolution which creates that as a condition. It has to actually just be done.
That's what I got from that, yes.
Yeah. I agree. That's what Guy said. I think it's a little weird. It's definitely not what I've seen for other projects in other municipalities. If that's a broad, like you cannot approve projects with a SWIP as a condition. I think that's odd, but you're right. That's what Guy said.
Yeah, I think I'm concerned, right? Because TG Miller, they are your town engineer. I saw their comments. They're reasonable. We will address them. But TG Miller is not the body to review or approve a SWIP. So,
I would have to disagree.
that's what's confusing to me is again, we'll work with them and find to put resolution with town engineer with respect to stormwater at SWIP comments. I'm happy to put that as a condition, but again, I just think the fact that TG Miller is not the governing body is concerning.
So we're not that concerned about it because our law says that our stormwater officer is the one that makes the ruling on the SWIP. And the stormwater officer happens to be the code officer who's on this call, but the town has an agreement with its engineering firm and with stormwater conservation to perform the technical analysis for stormwater in the event that our stormwater officer doesn't feel he's up to the task. So this is actually been this is something that's already been put in, process has been put in place, and this firm does have the authority to provide us with these comments.
So what are we looking for from Chet in response to this?
Including or responding to all the comments.
There's 10 comments here.
Yes, SWIP comments.
Okay.
Can I just chime in that?
No.
It'll ultimately be this board that approves it with, right?
Approves his response to this.
Approve the SWIP, basically, or the stormwater officer would be.
I think the stormwater officer
Has to
approves
approve
the
it.
SWIP.
Yeah, okay.
Well, can we ask Bob?
Yeah.
Bob, if you're on there, do you have any, do you have any comments or concerns about TG Miller's comments on the SWIP as far as?
I'm not through reviewing it. I'm sorry. I was waiting for more information. I expected to see something from the soil and water from the county. Is that correct?
No, they couldn't get to it till March, so we enlisted TG Miller to do the review of the SWIP. So, but they did send an updated comment letter the other day, but it was just the other day.
On the 22nd.
Yeah.
Wow.
As a matter of process, right? We submitted a SWIP in September. And we've been talking about this project for several months, and I think this is, the 22nd is the first time we understand we have things to resolve. And that is based on Don's explanation, I guess a new to us, brick wall or whatever we want to call that, a new just full stop point that we weren't aware of. So is that accurate, right? This is a full stop point now?
I think we get more than one, but this is one. So I can't speak to the process whenever you turned in the SWIP and when it moved away from us to a reviewing party. But I can speak to the fact that the first time the review board received any comments was on the 22nd of this month, yesterday.
Well,
So we're in the same position you are.
I mean, we received preliminary comments earlier, but the updated comments, I would say full review was yesterday.
There just seems something fundamentally as like a relative newcomer to the process of processes. There just seems something fundamentally frustrating to me about that concept. That they could submit something in September and through no fault of their own, through our own town failure of processes, being this late on something is odd to me. And I don't have a solution. I just that this is a full stop problem. Doesn't seems like that's on us or on the town's processes. And that seems that also, and as it relates to, it just seems like a recurring theme around here.
Well, thank you, but I will explain what happened. So we submitted the project documents for 239 review when we had a full application. And so I wasn't aware that the SWIP needed to be reviewed. And the County Planning and Sustainability said we can't review this until we have an engineering review. So that's what happened, and that's why it was delayed.
Is there a way of saying that we can move forward pending conditions or not?
Right. I again, you know, I'm trying to understand, because when we talk about putting conditions on a permit is, you know, this is the checklist required for you to actually, you know, this is the checklist required for you to actually have a real project. And that is, one of those is SWIP, and another of those is thou shalt, you know, follow through and resolve T.G. Miller's comments. And so we can't get a building permit, we can't advance until we've resolved those two items. So yeah, so Don, I'm just trying to understand, like, we don't have a fully functioning permit until we do those things, and that's why they're conditions, and that's why I think it's reasonable to state developer project must do these things, or else this whole resolution is null and void and they get out of town.
So I just respond by saying that I think we have a few more things on this list. Let's keep this as one that we want to go back to see where we are as we make our way through it. And then I could be up if this is the only thing that's holding us up to making it a condition. But I'm not sure it's the only thing.
All right, well, while we're on this, Bob, can I ask you, have you seen the recent comments from T.G. Miller?
No, I have not. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, then let's move on and come back to it.
Bob, I'm gonna send this to you now.
No, I have, it came in my email yesterday, but I was in the office until about 6 o'clock last night. You know, I was pretty busy and I did not get through all my emails as a result. Sorry.
Okay. Well, let's move through the other 239 review comments, and then we can always come back. Visual impact assessment. From their comment, any questions, comments on that?
No, I think I understand what they plan to do.
I feel like we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a visual impact assessment, and
Yeah.
they respond to that in a letter we received today.
And with an updated map, if you guys saw
I'm
that.
fine with that.
Which, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess with that being said, do we feel like that it needs to be part of the condition, or are we just striking?
No,
it all?
I think
No,
it's-
it's
I
been.
think it's done.
Yes, okay, good, just make sure we're all on the same page. DEC guidelines or guidance on stream crossing. Questions or comments?
No, I was utterly confused for a while about the various levels of federal and state thing about this, but I spent some time reading and I think it's fine.
And I'm grateful to Gene for doing it.
Excellent. The revised plan for non-native species, comment from county.
I don't think I remember that.
It was one species in the list.
They were Norway spruce were
Norway
being
spruce.
used, and it's an invasive.
Oh, right, they
species.
just wanted a different tree.
Yeah.
Put in a different tree, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can manage that, yes.
Excellent, yeah,
We weren't hung up on that tree.
excellent.
Town consult on regarding grid upgrade. That was the NICEAG town distributed sun meeting
Oh, yeah,
or whatever.
okay.
So the reason why this comes up is that whenever NICEAG looks at how they're gonna run a new line up through, which they're gonna do, they may need to they may want to change the course of where the poles are.
Right.
And if they have to do that, then there's easements and so on that need to be gathered to do it. Because we don't know where that's gonna go. It's out there as something that needs to be talked about. And the reason why it showed up on the 239 review is that they wanted to make sure the town was informed of that process and knew what was going on. So it's not a condition of approval, but it's a condition of being informed and being part of the process.
Right.
Yeah, well, interesting. So it's not, is it a meeting that should happen before a permit's issued?
No, because I don't think we would ever know until,
Until they're starting to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have not commenced detailed engineering yet. They won't commence that until we put the final payment in.
Right.
So do we want to keep this as a condition? And if so, what kind of condition is it? Because it's not a condition for a permit.
I think it's when, that you will let us, we will let the town know when, if you have to have a meeting with NICEAG about moving poles. Right?
They could just send us a letter to say that.
Yeah, a letter that says that would be great.
Okay, so we understand, right? The board would request a letter from NICEAG that, I guess.
Or you
I
guys.
guess if it's no poles moving, that's easy, right? Like, boom. But yeah, I will say with confidence, I've been through these before. We're adding extra weight with the insulators, with the wires going up. They're thicker gauge wires. So, I think there may be a chance of like adding more interstitial poles, but those would still be within the easement of NICEAG. So, I could see a case in which we have additional poles, but I don't know. My shallow understanding of that is that would still be in the easement and not require anything different. The facility holders, they're all there's the 4 poles near the roadside in which NICEAG is granting those easements, and those are directly with the landowners of the project. But I guess the question arises with this request is what happens if in these I think 7 miles back to the Brooktondale substation, a couple of poles actually do have to be moved because of new wetland rules that are in place that weren't in place when they were installed. I think that's the concern. Like, again, we can request it, we can get a letter, assuming everything's good. It's just leaving ourselves open on what happens if it's not good. And again, let me repeat, this hasn't been an issue on other projects, but just we've got an open side of things.
I think the ask is more of if there is anything with NICEAG and moving poles that the town's just notified about it, whether it be through meeting or some sort of correspondence.
Yeah,
Isn't that what I'm hearing?
exactly. Just,
Okay.
just
It's
let us
not,
know.
it's not a letter from NICEAG
No.
saying, no, we're not gonna move poles. It's hey, poles need to be moved. Loop
Tell us.
in the town on it.
Okay, but
It's not
But you're
with,
saying it's all within NICEAG's right of way anyway, or easements.
that's the way it's all been on our projects, and unfortunately, the request sounds so reasonable to see, whether to get advance notice. In all my projects, I've never seen a detailed set of drawings from NICEAG. They don't share that with me, and so therefore I mean,
you're talking,
Yeah.
if you make it a thing, we will request it. We will ask to get that information. But they're as many folks may gather, they're not the easiest to deal with, and getting a full affirmation that,
how about we just say, give it your best effort?
Yeah, and if I can just jump in here real quick, Chad, I don't know if you had a chance to read the letter, right? I did address, I think, what you're getting at here, which is we Distributed Sun can't be making commitments on behalf of the utility. We can't make them share things with you. We can't make them show up in meetings. We can make commitments on behalf of ourselves that will be transparent and share the information that we have and we can share. But I saw it as problematic that potentially considering a condition that would require a utility to show up at a meeting or send a letter. That's frankly not our business. And
I don't think we were asking that. I think we were asking for, if NICEAG told you, for you to tell us.
They might not tell them.
And if they don't tell you, I don't see how we can hold you to something that you don't know about.
Sure.
yes.
How are people feeling about striking this as a condition? Or feel like?
I think it's okay.
Fine.
Yeah.
If you're understanding the relationship between Distributed Sun and NICEAG, or NICEAG and anybody, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay, striking them. Next one is comply with Department of Ag and Markets solar guidelines. This also shows up later.
So we have a solar siting law. And section 8.6J says, agriculturally important areas, if construction of the facility temporarily or permanently affects agriculturally important area, the facility shall is a word, be constructed consistent with NICEAG, Ag and Markets guidelines for solar energy project construction mitigation for agricultural lands. Revision dated 10/18/2019. It further goes on to say in section K, environmental monitor and ag monitor, the environmental monitor and agricultural monitor are each authorized to issue stop work orders if both an environmental monitor and agricultural monitor are needed. The same individual may do both jobs if he or she is qualified to do both kinds of things. And the role of the environmental and agricultural monitor is described in detail in the Department of Ag and Markets guidelines. So your application never refers to this, to following these guidelines, and it needs to. This is required by our law.
Could I ask, the first part of that section started with an if statement. What was that first sentence?
It does, and so we can show you the map that the state supplies that shows that this land.
If it's in an agricultural district, is most likely the statement there, Seth, and that's the project.
It says if the if statement is if construction of the facility temporarily or permanently affects an agriculturally important area. And what Don is referencing is that this project is in what's considered a statewide important farm.
Yep.
So this portion of the law applies because it's a statewide important farm.
Yep.
The land.
And so we will comply with this. This was part of the submittal package to the Department of Ag and Markets. Obviously, we have not called sufficient attention to it with the town, to you guys. So if you want to put it as a condition, that's no problem. Or we can just get the most recent correspondence with Department of Ag and Markets to show that we have, all agreed to comply with their guidelines and with the requirement for an environmental and ag monitor. So
You do intend to have an agricultural monitor?
yes, we have obligated ourselves under our application to Ag and Markets. So yes, and again, if you want to put it as a condition, that's acceptable. Or if you just want to take, we'll get additional correspondence to share. There was correspondence shared, but document
I don't
shuffle.
know that we need correspondence that's been shared with the Department of Ag and Markets, but we need correspondence that's shared with the town of Caroline, that you will follow the solar law that we do have and comply with these guidelines for both construction and operations. And you already, in your decommissioning, already referenced that you will follow those guidelines for decommissioning. So we don't have to include that part because you've already done that.
Okay, so can we put that as a condition and make that part of a conditional approval?
Yeah.
Fine with me.
Yeah.
Fine with us as well. We'll pepper Bob with this and that to make sure he's fully up to speed.
Excellent.
Sure.
I don't know how to handle, so there's a number of items that were on our list from the SWIP review.
Yeah, maybe I can just help consolidate and manage this. Is that, project will resolve, what are those? The January 22nd letter from TG Miller and obtain, I don't know what we want to call it, but a satisfactory resolution to comments raised on January 22nd, 22 by TG Miller. I think
The SWIP comment.
that saves us a bunch on going through each individual item.
That sounds good. The 10 SWIP comments in here, right?
And I think this paper has even more
Then it has general comments, which are sort of about NICEAG and the NICEAG easements and buried utilities, which are not about the SWIP. They're really about other things, which I think are covered in.
Which they seem to already have figured out.
Yes.
That's about sort of life in general.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's the 10 SWIP comments that.
Is that are you amenable to it?
So what we're agreeing to is
They'll get answers to Bob,
And it's a part of the conditional approval,
and it's part of the conditional approval.
correct?
To the TG.
Yes.
Does that sound amenable to you?
Yes.
Can we get language in the condition that says like the responses are deemed sufficient? Something of that language, like an exact.
Well, let's just go read through them. It's about how are you going to do only disturb 5 acres at a time, or do you need to change that? That's one. Please include the ESC plans and details to an appendix. Provide a grass filter strip detail. That sounds very exciting. Provide an inspection and maintenance schedule for the grass filter strips. Consider adding energy dissipation measures to the northernmost solar array, which I have no idea what that actually means.
because the slope of the land is very steep, and so the water can.
So it's water.
Can channel.
Yeah, I guess one thing about that last one, they say consider adding.
It says consider adding.
So how do we go about, do we just consider it and then provide that to teachers?
You can tell either why you're doing it or not doing it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because
we looked at.
Would the wording be then responses deemed sufficient or plan modified sufficiently? Is that overstating it?
It was properly addressed.
Properly addressed.
At the end of the process, we will need to seek from TG Miller, we have explained more. TG Miller will have to say something to the effect of the developer has updated drawings and explained, provided additional detail to, make a reasonable approach to SWIP. I mean, that's what we have to work through.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the board would approve that condition. Like, it's not up to TG Miller. That would be up to the-
No, TG Miller is the consultant, and I I believe as far as anything concerning SWIP, it would be the stormwater officers who approves the plan, the final plan.
Okay.
He would, I don't know if he has a stamp, but he would stamp it and approve the plan, not the board.
Right.
We are approving the project with a condition.
Right, so it's up to Bob.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can say something.
Thanks.
I-
Thanks, Bob.
I was mistaken. I did open this and read through it yesterday and was expecting something directly from TG Miller, like a summary saying we recommend approval or something. And I still, and I'm sorry, I was a little confused about the procedure. I thought that 239 review wouldn't be complete until they had, reviewed all the information that you would be reviewing. But I have read it and I understand, read it over again this evening, and I understand it, and it certainly looks, I don't see a problem with it.
Right, so all the comments or suggestions seem reasonable and not problematic for any reason.
There were 10 SWIP comments and 9 general comments, so it's a pretty complete review, I think.
Or do we maybe even want to flip the condition to acceptability by the stormwater officer, or is it? I mean, because that brings it more in your house. I mean, that's sort of a finer point.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it already is.
Yeah.
It already is set up so that the stormwater officer in the town accepts the SWIP. He's just getting a consultation with TG Miller.
Right.
Right. So we'll work with TG Miller, but instead of referencing resolving on their letter with TG Miller, we say we resolve stormwater comments with the stormwater officer, who then, we're all 3 parties are communicating: your town stormwater officer, our engineer, and TG Miller, your town consultant. All the parties will be in communication, but the writing should point to acceptable by the stormwater officer.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Agree.
Then, can I bring up one more point? For all the SWIP review items, one of them is provide approval from fire chief. Is there
So that's a comment afterwards. That's not
a different
SWIP.
comment?
Yeah.
That's not SWIP.
That's not the SWIP
It does
stuff.
say SWIP.
Oh, it's labeled under SWIP.
That's why the guys from Speedgrove are waiting all this time.
It is labeled under SWIP review. I don't know if that was a misnomer.
It was a general comment from,
That's what that's.
from TG Miller review.
Oh,
It was one of their general comments.
Yeah.
And
So the reason why it has that label on the front is that's the document it came from.
right,
So we know where to find it.
So, do we move to the compliance with 8.6J dam?
well, I think we already agreed that
We're down to
Yeah, you're right.
we've done
Mission
that.
estimate now.
That and the environmental monitor
Okay.
are both gonna.
So recalculate initial surety.
I wasn't quite sure why it needed to be recalculated. Oh,
So our,
Yeah.
our law, again, reading from our solar law, says the estimated cost of 100 shall be prepared, this is for decommissioning. The estimated cost shall be prepared by a licensed engineer and be sealed accordingly, and annual cost shall take into account New York State's prevailing wage rules and any inflationary rise in surety amounts covered. Contain an evergreen clause or otherwise account for increases in the cost of decommissioning and restoration in a manner as approved by the town board. So what's been sent to us is some numbers that come from NYSERDA, but it's not and what the point that TG Miller is making, it was not done by a certified engineer. So this has no statement.
Don, that is not correct. It's stamped by Ray Darling on the first page of the decom plan.
So he's stamping that he read those, or he actually did a calculation.
Ray Darling, we spoke about it. He used NYSERDA's guidance to cost estimate what the decommissioning would be.
I'd have to say that when you pull out a chart from NYSERDA and you put it in your appendix, that it's really hard for E.G. Millers or a review board member to see that it has an engineer stamp on it, but have to take you at your word that he's actually done the work. So then my question would be, the amount that's being proposed to be put up in security bond for decommissioning is about at year 0. So that means that whatever you bring forward will have to be increasing every year after that. And it's only required that we review this every 3 years. So from my perspective, I would think you'd want to be providing us with a surety bond for year 3, and then every 3 years go up another 3 years. But I'm looking to find out how you think you should be handling this.
So, we cannot predict, or we don't think it reasonable to predict year 3, year 6, year 9 decommission costs for all those things. So what Ray did was just add a 2.5% inflationary value over decommissioning costs into the future. So there's a whole schedule out every 3 years, but that's I would call that for indicative purposes, so that, to your point, the law says there needs to be a review every 3 years. There needs to be a review every 3 years. The decom plan has indicative numbers out for the lifetime of the project, 30 years. So the town can see that. Again, I don't think it's
in 3 years
really sensible to predict the cost, ad infinitum out 30 years, but that's what has been provided.
Are you, pardon my ignorance, but are you saying so in 3 years, if it looks like you haven't put enough money in, you'll put more in?
Correct. And that we have stepped that up just based on 2.5% inflation rate. Okay. So whatever happens, we plan to put on more, and this is helpful for our accountants to say the project has to have an additional surety bond updated in year 3, year 6, year 9. So that's a financial planning thing on our side.
Yeah, because it says if it's monetarily insufficient, then the owner shall update such bond or undertaking.
Okay.
So it would be my hope going forward that we actually see some engineering work done to determine what the decommissioning costs, as opposed to pulling something off a website.
May I respond? I think NYSERDA put together this report on decommissioning solar panel systems so that there was a standard across the state. I think that was the original intention that NYSERDA did, and that is why we used their numbers. So instead of every project individually going out and determining a decommissioning cost, NYSERDA did it statewide and published those numbers, and that was the numbers that were used to study the decommissioning costs of these projects. So I guess my question to you is, would you rather us come up with a number, which is we're incentivized to come up with a lower number, or would you prefer that a certain number, which is a state recognized and accepted decommissioning cost that we are just using?
So I'll just start out by saying that our law says it's supposed to be done by a licensed engineer. So you just told me that it wasn't. So I just make that point. So now, how do we go ahead from here? Do we want to take NYSERDA's number or not? I think that's something because the town is the one that's on the hook for this, not the review board. And I think they need to be part and parcel of this conversation. What number do they want? Because if it turns out that this project goes flat and you guys just leave it, then the only option the town has is put a lien on the property. And who knows when the hell we'll ever get the money back.
I mean, I don't think NYSERDA made those numbers up, did they?
No, and I assume they were done by a licensed engineer, but from my point of view. My point of view is that if Ray Darling stamped this, which he did as the professional engineer for the project, he is using a generally accepted method put forward by NYSERDA, which makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. And we also can see what other communities have done, so that in 3 years, when the town has to do this, they'll be able to see what other communities across the state have done where there are projects like this, and how they have dealt with it in terms of their increase, which I would assume that NYSERDA is also watching carefully. I would hope. They may not be, but, you know, the towns, what is it, the Association of Towns should be looking at these kinds of information, right? So I don't have a huge problem with it at all. I mean, it seems to me a rational way of going about it. And that I can't imagine that Mr. Darling would have. Professional engineers, I think, are pretty careful about what they stick their stamp on.
I would say the engineer, whoever he is, Darling, you know, if he reviewed it and he agrees with the numbers, then it's kind of like a SWIP or anything else in that, you know, they review the work, they deem it acceptable, they stamp it, then they are saying they agree with it and move on.
So, excuse me, but the statement that you read about going, they would increase, if there's an increase.
You want that, what it says again?
Yes, please.
It says, at a minimum, at least once every 3 years after any approval or permit is issued by the town, the applicant or then future or successor owner or operator of the facility shall provide an updated certified cost estimate for decommissioning, removal, and restoration. And if the resulting 125% cost requirement shows that the existing security or bond is monetarily insufficient, then the owner shall update such bond or undertaking or see to its replacement or supplementation in an amount to equal such updated minimum 100%, 125% of cost number.
Okay.
And the town, it says at a minimum of 3 years. The town, you know, it could be less. So I don't have a problem with it, but.
I'm also moved by your analysis that NYSERDA probably used a licensed engineer as well. I think we have 2 licensed engineers.
I think NYSERDA has any number of places.
It's a state agency, Jack, right? Had to have a second opinion.
You have to have repetitive people doing things. I live in a house designed by an engineer. We have 5, count them, 5 heating systems, just in case anything goes wrong.
I love it.
Yeah, what can I say?
It is a state agency. There is probably 1 engineer doing the work and 3 more watching.
Maybe as a parallel piece of information is obviously NYSERDA publishes standard terms for pilot agreements and how to write a solar law. They have taken it as part of their remit to educate and publish information to be used more broadly. So that is part of their remit.
I'm comfortable moving to the next bullet point. If
so, are enough people in agreement to strike the recalculation of the initial study?
Okay.
Okay. So we had the last, which you had as review board, resubmit operations and maintenance plan, but I think this is in response to some of the SWIP comments that were asking about specific. Oh no, it's general comments. Sorry, there were general comments from TG Miller about the operation and maintenance plan, about specify the vegetative trimming heights and additional comments and stuff. Is that what you were relating for?
So those are the general comments that show up after SWIP.
Right, and so then your last item on the list was resubmit operations and maintenance plan. Was that in response to?
So this is what we talked about before under the, find it up here. Comply with the Department of Ag and Market solar guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already discussed it.
I see. Okay. So strike that as a separate condition?
So they're gonna provide us with a note that they're following the damn DAM guidelines.
The damn guidelines.
I agree.
Damn good. All right. Because you already had it there. other items to discuss?
I think the only other thing that I want to talk about a little is the community distributed generation program. So for people in the audience, when DSUN first brought this to us, they talked about wanting to have a community distributed generation program, meaning that people who resided in the town of Caroline could buy into the solar energy produced and get a reduced rate from their NYSEG bill, essentially. Is that how you would describe that?
Correct. You reserve a certain amount of panels in the project, like a community garden.
Exactly.
Solar.
Right. And then sometime, let me see, in May of 2024, Governor Hochul's office put out a program called the new Solar for All program. And there was some confusion about whether that completely replaced the community distributed generation program. And so I wrote a letter on behalf of the board, signed by Craig, that said, we're writing to ask for your help in understanding this. You know, does it replace this is the project that's being done. And it's one of the attractive benefits to us and for the people of the town is this community solar, which would allow residents the first opportunity to obtain a better rate. And then we talked about how they put out this public service announcement and no one mentioned this other thing. And so we didn't know what was going on. So could you sort this out? So the general counsel of the Department of Public Service wrote back and said, as attorneys will, something that's fairly indecipherable.
It did not help at all for me.
Well, I think it has helped for me. I've now read it 15 times and I've read it aloud. So I find it reading it aloud helps, don't you think? And he says, I am writing in response to your letter dated blah, blah, where you seek clarification regarding the impacts of the statewide Solar for All SFA program. Specifically, you ask whether or not, you do not need or not, I want him to know that, the SFA program will impact the town of Caroline residents' ability to participate in a community distributed generation program, which I refer to as community solar. And it says, as directed by the commission, when it adopted the SFA program, customers are allowed to participate in both the SFA program and another distributed generation program, like a CDG program. So a situation referred to as dual participation. The SFA program is an automatic benefit that will be provided to low-income residents that reside in disadvantaged communities. I do not think that we are counted as a disadvantaged community under New York State. But no action is required on behalf of customers to receive this benefit. And receipt of this benefit will not impact customers' ability to also participate in a CDG program. So from my point of view, there are dual programs out there, so we can have a CDG program. I called today to say, am I understanding you correctly? And I got they'll call me back sometime. But that's what I think this means. And I don't see how one could read it in any other way, except that three people I know who read it interpreted it 3 different ways. So we did ask our attorney what he thought of this, but I don't think we've heard back from our attorney.
How does Distributed Sun read it?
So we look at it from a developer power generating facility standpoint.
Sure.
The project itself can decide to enter either of the programs. The project cannot enter both. So it can be part of the statewide Solar for All program, or it can be a community distributed generation project. The key difference here is in the statewide Solar for All program, utility basically buys all the energy from the project and it distributes the benefits of it to low to moderate income and disadvantaged communities in the utility territory. The flip side is what the system has been for a while up until this new program, community distributed generation, where the project is built on the utilities grid and it markets to individual customers who buy into the community distributed generation project, the community solar farm. That's the system as we knew it before.
Right.
You would buy 10 or so panels in the array. You receive 2 energy bills, and the solar bill with the credits you receive would offset your utility bill, effectively giving you a 10% discount on your energy bill.
Right.
So that's what's going on here. So the state implemented this new system while we were in this review process with the town. And the project itself can decide to go into the statewide program where the utility buys all the power, or they can stick to the original system where they will market to individual customers who will buy into the plant.
I guess it seems like kind of a no-brainer from your perspective to do the one where the state buys all of it, don't?
So the state, if the project enrolls in statewide solar for all, they get a benefit of not having to do
Marketing.
upfront customer acquisition costs and then customer management costs. And also if customers don't pay their bills,
Right.
They also have to absorb those losses.
Right.
And that's have to sit on their books as well. If they go into the statewide solar for all program, they don't have to worry about customer acquisition. The project doesn't have to worry about customer management expenses, and they don't have to put a reserve for losses from non-payment. But the utility is going to take all that burden, and they just reduce the energy that the project, reduce the revenues that the project will get. So if the project goes out to the market to find customers, they can charge at a rate, they can set their discount on the utility bill. If they go into the statewide program, the utility automatically 13% discount reduction on the price. So it's up to the project. Do I take the 13% haircut and don't have any customer management expenses, or do I go into the market, find customers, and manage them? And I guess it depends on the company. If they feel very confident in customer management, they would prefer the CDG route. They may be smaller and they're not having good customer experience. They might go down this statewide solar for all.
So we don't get to find out which one it's going to be until.
So that is up to the long-term asset owner of the project. We cannot make any determination on their behalf at this point in the process.
I'd ask about that. Is that a yearly contract? Is that 30-year contract? When you enter into it with the state?
I don't know how long the contract is. Chet, if you could provide more color on that. I think if the program enters into it's just part of that program. Yeah.
You potentially could go back and forth or not.
I guess I don't know. I guess I don't know the system that well as far as like after you enter it.
I wish the general counsel had explained that.
They explained it from a customer standpoint. So if you are an LMI customer,
Right.
disadvantaged community in NYSEG's utility territory, they get a benefit of
Right.
the Solar for All program, and they can also sign up for a community solar.
Exactly.
So
But that's,
As soon as it gets built.
It was not the perspective you were asking.
The company
for, but that's
is.
the perspective.
right, but that's a very limited,
Six solar LLC.
that's very limited areas in the upstate.
Sue
they
has
have
her hand up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sue.
I'm just curious if the long-term asset owner does opt for the CDG approach, is it an option for us to have the town of Caroline residents get the initial exclusivity offer as part of the program?
Yes, so we mentioned this in an earlier review board meeting. Distributed Sun's previous projects have offered the long-term asset owners of the projects that Distributed Sun has developed has in the past offered exclusivity periods for the local residents.
Mm-hmm.
Our current partner on this project and expected long-term asset owner shares this sentiment and sees a lot of value in it. So while we cannot commit on their behalf, they share the same belief we do, where it's a positive, net positive for the project instead of a burden on it.
Okay.
So if there's any way that, because this is the way this project was offered to the town, you guys have no weight with your long-term owner?
We do have weight with our long-term asset owner, but for the approval of the project, I guess I'm trying to say is like, we don't think it should be a condition or a reason of why the project would not get approved. Does it make sense? Like a site, like an exclusivity period I guess I'll stop there, but am I making sense?
Yeah.
But I just explained my problem with this whole this whole thing was, that this was presented to us before October. We were gonna have exclusive offer for the first amount of the power that come out of there as town of Caroline residents. Then on October 31st, we came up with this, we were questions and from you guys and everything else. And on this one, you said the applicant is currently working with the marketing team to provide a local benefit to the residents of Caroline. Had I not asked the question at that time to please explain it, that shouldn't this say that we're getting an exclusive offer of this? It would have went. And to me, that was October 31st, and the Public Service Commission came up with this new ruling in May. So I just kind of didn't like that. And like I said, when you say that, I just thought there should be some way that since it was offered to the town that way, that was a great benefit for the town. And how that can just go away depending on what you say, it blows me away.
Chet has something to say to that, I think.
Yes. Hi, Bruce. Yeah. So, obviously, yes, the documentation from the PSC was issued in May, but sort of to echo Gene, there was a lot of misunderstanding from industry and from from our side of the house that didn't quite grasp that how this was working, and the updated guidance was issued in November, right? So we were still processing as this all went to apply to permit with you all. And just to again echo Mark, we're happy to put something to the extent, I don't know how to let me think about the phrasing a little bit, but if we go forward with the CDG element, yes, we will market to town of Caroline first. So that's what I wanted to say there.
I just looked up the disadvantaged communities in our county, and basically it's the city of Ithaca, which is very low income, and heading up out towards Robert Treman Park. So that part of the town of Ithaca, which is also relatively low income, but those are the only, and this is based on census tracts. Those are the only communities in Tompkins County. And then you're heading down towards essentially Binghamton. And yeah, it's pretty much Binghamton and down into Delaware County.
I don't personally blame distributed for not wanting to lock themselves into something they don't have to. My frustration on this particular instance, is with the state. I don't know why they did this to.
Yeah.
I would prefer that you guys happily say that we're gonna make it better for the town of Caroline, but I get why they're not. I just don't think the state should have come down one day and said, you can't do this anymore.
Right, and lock them into only doing it one way. So
seems heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I guess I would say that I very much hope that your eventual owner will see it that way.
So it's a state law that you can only participate in one of these programs. You can't participate in both.
We can double check with our policy department and get back to you on that. I think, for me personally, I think that's exactly right. You can pick one or the other. But we can get a more detailed and exact answer to you after this meeting.
I'd love to have conversations with the general counsel, so I'm gonna try again and answer that question, because
Gene, I just want to add that it's disadvantaged communities and low and moderate income customers. So there is an additional pool.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not just those communities. It's and unfortunately I can't remember the exact qualification under NICEAG's regs for LMI, low and moderate income, but it's larger pool
in the county.
I think it's per census tract. So you can look up your LMI, whatever that threshold is in your census tract, and that will tell you if you qualify.
Suffice to say, there are people, I assume, in town that will qualify and will see benefit to this.
Oh, yeah.
From
Absolutely. Yeah.
Are we, well, so,
Oh, the fire department. Just want to make
So
sure
we,
that's.
we still have a few more items on this list,
Yeah.
even though we did skip to the bottom.
so are you referring to the items that were general comments from C.G. Miller?
Yep,
or-
so there are
Okay.
3 of them that I see that we still have to work on.
So-
One is commitment to mitigate glare. Apparently, DG Millers has done a little bit of work, or maybe they're just concerned as these panels turn, that there could be some household that is going to be watching the sun,
Oh,
getting a nice solar bath.
so not for people driving, but for people's houses particularly. Okay.
Exactly. Which,
Yeah.
because they're not, metered, they get a really
Right.
good one. So they're just asking to look at that and do an analysis of it. And I think that's fair to ask.
Mhm.
The other thing that TG Miller mentioned, which we've talked about as well, is it's a condition of our site plan review that you have provide approval from the fire chief that they can, that they feel comfortable with the access roads that you put in and that they understand what's required of them if there's an emergency. So that requires Distributed Sun to do the outreach and get such a note from the fire chief. And the third thing is, which is something we also talked about, is that the county provides highway permits and driveway permits. And you need to be providing those permits as a condition.
So we would apply for those permits at the same time as the building permit. Don, is
That's
that? I
fine.
mean,
Yeah, that's fine.
so we need to provide that to Bob as one of his checklists, and that's no
Exactly.
problem.
Yep.
I guess as it comes to glint and glare, I've had to talk about this on every single project, and our array is the one that's right next to Ithaca Tompkins Regional Airport. So we coordinated directly with them. Directly with the folks in the tower or at the office. We also submitted to the Federal Aviation Administration saying, here, there's this thing that may have some issues. Pass both, no problems. And just sort of want to point out as a point of what these things are meant to do is they're black and they absorb the light. If it's glinting, they're not doing their job well. When you look at a solar array, it's actually darker than a pond or a lake or some bluish element like that. And I've done these reviews on all my projects, and there's really been very little to show for it. Especially, I think this one would be interesting because it's up on a hill, and again in the rare case that at 6 p.m. on June 21st, there's a bit of a glint. It's ephemeral, and it might affect someone a mile down the road, and we can't grow a tree that tall. So just trying to narrow in and see what exactly we need to do. We do have vegetation management and screening plans provided. So just concerned that that's a little open-ended.
I hadn't, honestly, I feel kind of silly, not suggesting that you should, Don. I just hadn't considered that if it was glinting, it wasn't doing its job. It's meant to catch light, not reflect it back, right? Because it's not a mirror. It's meant to catch solar energy. And I guess this is just a sort of casual point, but having driven past that array every day that I go to the gym, I've never seen light glinting off it. But I guess the simple question is these are newer ones that are going to rotate. Does that add anything to that glint and glare question?
I think it does. I think that's a really important point because they stop at a certain degree, right? They don't. I think it's 30 degrees from parallel or from horizontal, meaning just the angles involved. If they were a mirror, as you say, they follow the sun, they track the sun, and they stop at a certain point. So after that point, even if they were a mirror, the light's hitting it and going upward. There's not a point where the light's hitting it and going towards someone that's on the ground. you'd have to be very high in the air, even at the fence line, in order to be facing it in a way that would be, the sun's right behind you and at 30 degrees. I mean, 50 feet back at 30 degrees, you're tens of feet in the air. So the fact that they're on a tracking system, actually, yes, that's an excellent point. Even if they were producing reflection, that would help greatly.
And to add to Seth's comment, if it's a low enough angle to start thinking about there, the sun's also probably right in your face too. So there's a lot of factors going on why we've addressed this on just about every other project, and it's not been an issue.
So that, what do you want to see?
So our engineering firm is the one that's bringing this forward. I would just have to say that where this site is, it's not flat. So you can be 50 feet away at a 30-degree angle and still be in the light. So I wouldn't make the assumption that the ground where the solar array is flat and you would have glare from something else. I do happen to have a solar array and I do know they absorb light, but I also know that you can get reflection off them as well. So if you feel that you don't have to consider it, then you can tell us that and we'll just have to take it under advisement. And whenever a neighbor comes by and says that they're affected, then we'll bring that to you and let you know that the next project you do, you may want to consider it. But for now, I'll just assume, let this go because you're convinced that you're not going to have a glaring problem. And so now let's talk about the approval from the fire chief.
Yes.
We start some discussions. We haven't got very far, but we're gonna be getting together, discussing more. And that would include going with the code enforcement officer, them and myself.
So at some point in time, you need to provide to, or we need to get a note provided by Distributed Sun that you are comfortable with the roads that have been put in and that you understand the role you need to play. And I fully recognize that this is one point in time and that the people in the department will change out and there may be things that change about how you respond. And so I'm hoping that Distributed Sun or whoever their successor is will make sure that they keep the fire department appraised of any changes going forward.
And yeah, we can do that. We will do that. Obviously, it's already in process. We're designing code and have a few things to train the local emergency responders on. Just wondering if we can find a more precise word than approval, as you guys are, legally set up board. I'm not sure that the fire department is the same legal status. We'll get you we'll work with them. We'll get their confirmation. Just approval is a tough word.
They're not approving anything.
Right.
The whole idea is that you have communication with them. They understand what's happening and they don't have concerns that they want the town review board to address.
Right. T.G. Miller used the word approval, which is why I was cautioning that, but I think we're generally in agreement.
Is that the word? Agreement?
Yeah.
Completely in agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the only thing we have left now is the SWIP that we put off to the end. And because it doesn't seem like we have anything else that's stopping us from moving ahead.
Right.
And we should put that in as a condition.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the next task for us is to try to resurrect this whole conversation and figure out what conditions we're putting in the resolution.
I think we sort of have that.
Good, I'm glad somebody does.
Someone's been monitoring that.
And then Jesse.
I do, but I'm not going to form it into a resolution on the spot, I don't think. But I don't know how else.
Does Jesse have that formed well enough to make a resolution?
You could ask her.
I think I have them listed here. So it was it's Speedy's permit, is that how you say it?
Yep.
NYSEG agreement,
Yep.
Army Corps permit, the NYSDAM adverse response,
Yep.
the DEC take permit,
Yep,
and the SWIP approval,
yep,
the revise the non-invasive species, comply with dam solar guidelines, provide agreement from the fire chief, provide county driveway permit.
yep.
That's what I've got.
And if I could make a quick comment on the species, I just remembered something that our consultant pointed out. It's understanding that it's well, I would just suggest if you're going to say don't use a invasive species, specify which list you're using. This species is not invasive on the New York list. It's our understanding that perhaps it is on a county list or some local list that the county is referencing. So
We
just
just
want-
say use a native pine species.
Well, no, that may be even more restrictive to us. I think we're fine with the non-invasive part, but by what list, right? There's every region has their own list. And again, this is not on New York's list. And if we would have just had open-ended language that said non-invasive species, we might have moved forward with this, only to have the county say, hey, it's on our list. So I think we just need to define which list we're using.
It's a valid point.
Yeah, I have no idea. That would be my list.
So is Sue left or is she still part of this?
Let's see.
Sue, what do you suggest?
But she's an alternate.
She can give you
She can
input.
provide input.
I think it's a very valid point that the county may be working from a different list of suggested species, and this we raised a little while ago. Are they going to be asking about invasive species? But I'm sure there are plenty of trees that can fulfill the need there. So could wording be put in there that an acceptable species of tree to the county will be substituted instead of the Norway spruce?
So in the 239 review, the county does recommend their list. They
That's the
refer to
supplement to
specific
see what this comes.
So you can use that if you want.
Yeah, I pulled it up here too. It says the list of the invasive plants in Tompkins County, New York.
So there is such a list.
Okay, so it's the Tompkins County list. So
If it's in the last line of the first page from the 239 review, it gives you the list of invasive plants of Tompkins County, New York.
Which includes the Norway spruce.
right.
That's great. As long as the list is defined, we can work with that. So thank you.
That makes sense.
So if a tree dies, you replace it, correct?
That's what the egg monitor and it does.
Okay.
So Jesse, the only thing I would add is that we also had to properly address comments that have been provided on the SWIP.
The SWIP comments.
SWIP comments.
The general comments, you mean, or the SWIP?
No,
Just
SWIP
SWIP
comments.
Okay.
The January 22nd letter from TG Miller.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
To the satisfaction of the stormwater officer of town.
Exactly. That's what I have.
Yep.
Great. So with that, can we take?
Bob has a question.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to apologize for my confusion earlier. I was looking for an official report and it said a comment letter, but I did read the letter yesterday, and thanks to Don's long list, I had plenty of time to look it over more closely this evening, and I'm comfortable with all the points they make. So if you need any kind of decision from me tonight, if that would help, I'm very comfortable with it.
We're not asking for.
I appreciate your input. I think that makes us feel more comfortable potentially approving the project.
Yeah.
But then ultimately, it's between you and DSUN.
Right. I'll be the boots on the ground, making sure it's done. Okay.
Yes.
I did that before, so in another county, so
Great.
What were you gonna say?
thank you.
And you want to,
I do. I want to make a resolution that we approve the resolution that was submitted by DSUN and add, whereas the review board has reviewed the documents submitted and has created a list of conditions that need to be met before provided all conditions stated are met, that we then approve this. That
You want to make that resolution?
I do.
Okay, so go ahead.
Would you like me to read this entire resolution?
So resolved.
You don't have to read that.
Okay,
I think
we should do this because this is serious, right? So this is the resolution of the review board of the town of Caroline approving an application for subdivision site plan review and special use permit for the project, which consists of 4 separately interconnected community photovoltaic facilities located along 76 Road, County Road 115. Whereas Caroline 076 Solar One LLC on behalf of Caroline 076 Solar One LLC, Caroline 076 Solar Roman numeral 2 LLC, Caroline Solar 3 Roman numeral Caroline blah blah blah, and Solar 4 LLC, collectively referred to as the applicant, submitted an application for site plan review, special use permit, and subdivision of 4 separately interconnected community photovoltaic facilities along 76 Road, also known as County Road 115, the project to the Town Review Board of the Town of Caroline on September 16th, 2024. And whereas the project consists of civil and electrical work to plan, construct, and operate 4 solar photovoltaic facilities as follows: 5 megawatt AC solar, I hate photovoltaic facilities, and 1
Say PV, that's easier.
and 1 2.5 megawatt solar SPV facility. The civil works will include tree removal, construction of security fences, placement of access paths, installation of lattice structures to mount solar modules, and installation of electrical equipment pads. Electrical work will include internal wiring, installation of inverters, transformers, utility poles, and ancillary equipment to connect each SPV facility to the New York State Electric and Gas Corporation, NYSEG, electrical distribution networks. The project will also include the subdivision of parcels 30-1-2.2 and 30.1-3. Whereas following declaration as lead agency, the board provided a negative declaration of environmental significance for the project as presented on December 3rd, 2024. Whereas the board conducted a conscientious review of the materials provided by the applicant for the project with respect to the Town of Caroline Local Law Number 2 of 2024, the zoning law, the local law number 3 of 2021, the solar energy siting law, and the Town of Caroline Local Law Number 4 of 2024, the subdivision review law of 2024. Whereas the board has reviewed the site plan, special use permit application, and subdivision plan submitted by the applicant along with all supporting documents, and find that the project complying with the laws, and find that the project complying with the laws, including but not limited to the Town of Caroline zoning law, the solar energy siting law, and the Town of Caroline subdivision review law of 2024. Whereas the applicant has presented additional discretionary permits, approvals, and milestones that must be completed prior to the project reaching a maturity to apply for building and electrical permits, the board will ask for reasonable confirmation that the applicant has completed steps and conditions defined below, and that the town code enforcement officer performed said review. Now, I would also add the whereas the review board has reviewed and discussed many items this evening and has created a list herein contained of conditions that must be met. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the members of the board that the site plan review for each solar SPV, special use permit for each SPV, and subdivision of the project located along 76 Road, County Road 115, are hereby approved, subject to the following conditions. The applicant presents an approved permit from DEC for a general permit for stormwater discharges for construction activities. Under the state pollution discharge elimination system, the applicant provides 4 fully executed agreements by and between the project company and NICEAG to confirm the agreement in advancement of the 4 projects with these identification numbers under the New York State Standardized Contract for Interconnection and blah, blah, blah. The applicant provides a nationwide permit 14 issued by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. The applicant provides a water quality certification under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act from New York State DEC. The applicant provides correspondence or proof that the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets has determined that the project is unlikely to have unreasonably adverse effect or similar language. The project provides a take permit from New York State DEC for the habitat impact on the northern harriers observed at the project location. So these are some of the conditions that we
Not
had,
all.
but not all.
Yes.
So we would add
Right.
some of those conditions there. The board authorizes the town of Caroline to issue all necessary permits and approvals to facilitate the implementation of the project, provided all conditions stated above are met, provided, however, the applicant may proceed with less than 4 solar photovoltaic facilities and still receive all necessary permits and approvals to facilitate the implementation of the solar photovoltaic facilities that applicant deems acceptable to construct and operate. So I take that to mean that if there is some reason they cannot do all 4, we are still providing approval. The resolution shall therefore take effect immediately, and I am moving this.
I second.
Could you read it one more time?
Yes,
It's
it's
something-
a newly solar photovoltaic.
Okay, so we had a second
I'd like to make
discussion.
one amendment.
Yes.
We are not talking about a special use permit. So that section, which is right in the therefore, the site plan review for each
So we would have to take out
facility,
the special use
the
permit.
subdivision for the project located, subdivision for the project located. right here.
So that's in the first whereas.
There's a couple of
But
them.
we're not doing a special.
I think it's in the title too, so.
There's a couple of them
Yes,
throughout
okay.
that just the special permits need to be
So
crossed out.
Jesse, it's in the title and it's in the first whereas.
What should it say instead? Permit?
Yeah, I got
This
them.
is
Site-
An application for site plan
It says site
review
plan review
and
and
subdivision
subdivision.
is all it would say.
Yeah.
No special use.
And also, in the now therefore be it resolved, we would take out the special use permit there.
Okay.
Okay. So that's, thank you.
Any other discussions, changes?
Early on, you had an insertion of the condition, right, in your language.
Yes, and I'm gonna take that out and we're gonna add the conditions under here now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Comments? Changes? Then, we had a second, all in favor?
Aye.
For approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Is everyone saying
Yeah.
yes? Because you all have to show the,
All approved and Sue doesn't, you don't have to count.
we don't count Sue.
Sue.
Okay.
Not that we don't love Sue, but we don't have to count.
Well, the Sue is very noble then to attend this.
Sue gets to stay home.
All right, project approved. Before we adjourn, I just want to go over the agenda for the February 4th meeting.
Mhm.
Do we have a couple-
Could I just ask one question? Thank you for taking the vote. Observe that Don, you struck some language about the special use permit from the resolution. I guess if that is not addressed now, when is that planned to be addressed?
It's not required.
It's not, it isn't necessary.
The solar law doesn't require a special use permit.
Under the project's subject to site plan review under the town's zoning law,
Oh, all right. That's
special use permit. So,
man. I guess I set it up early saying all that stuff, but if that's fine. Thank you for correcting. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
If nothing additional is required.
Yeah, you
Wow, except for a huge list of stuff.
Yeah, we got a few things to do. But just want to thank you for clarifying thank you.
Okay.
Agenda for the February 4th meeting, I've got the Tubbs lot line adjustment.
Uh-huh.
Have you guys all seen that?
Yep.
Came through a week and a half ago or something like that? Okay. The Van Veer lot line adjustment. And then the Hammond subdivision.
The Van Leer is the one that has A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is the Hammond?
They were the ones that sat up here and actually
Yes.
walked us through.
This is a question for
They
Bob,
just
I
had to get
guess.
Bob.
Has the Hammond application been modified so that it includes a lot line adjustment?
Yeah, that was written right in this survey. On the map, one of the notes said
Or something?
about consolidating the lots, right?
So at the last meeting, I would say the rest of us read that as consolidating that parcel with the one next to it being a lot line adjustment. But you sounded
Well,
like when you
well,
reviewed
that-
it wasn't.
Merger.
If that document goes to the county clerk,
Right.
will that, in the assessment office, will that lot A be its own lot? Or will it be part of, and it's not clear to me on that drawing that it becomes part of the other parcel.
I'm not looking at it, but I think there was note 1 and 2, and I think the second one said, identified this lot, it will be consolidated with, and it named the other lot by the tax number.
Right.
And I spoke to the applicant and he said he would prefer that be done at the same time,
I would want him to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it needs to be done at the same time.
yeah, I remember that.
Also,
Well,
I think the process of, it's not really a lot line adjustment, but of merging lots.
Yeah.
It's a really simple process. You just submit a form at assessment. And if you own both lots, they just merge them. So my recommendation would be that you do that first and then do the rest.
Yeah, because we looked at the map specifically. I remember.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, that's what's on the agenda. That's what I have. I'll prep the part 2 and 3 for Hammond.
Yeah.
But we gotta do the public hearing.
Yeah, so there is a public hearing scheduled and it's been advertised.
Okay,
Great.
great.
And you sent it to the county for 239 review. Expedited 239 review.
I will double check on that. You have that, Bob?
I don't,
Yeah, tomorrow, I'll check on it.
All right.
Yeah.
Mark, when are we supposed to get information from the county? We don't have to go through this for every subdivision.
So they told me they were gonna be writing a new agreement. Now it's the new year now, so I'll ask Abigail. And they weren't, what I thought that we could do is, can we just have a temporary agreement? But they said, no, just, so anyway, I'll follow up.
It hasn't been set, so.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Excellent idea.
All in favor? Aye.
Everybody's in favor.
Including those running for the door.